there was a great article by friend of the show, Arthur Bloom, in the American Conservative relatively recently about this going on in Virginia with like the potential shuttering of union jobs. And then the entire left just says, what, do you want the world to burn? This is good. We have to deal with climate change.
Oh, yeah.
And I had this argument with a couple of people a few weeks back, and it was fascinating to me, the extent of the blinders, because like I don't care about climate change in this particular discussion, and this is what they couldn't see. I'm like, what are you going to do to make it so that they're okay? Like, what's in this for them? And their responses were just constantly to refer to all these like world-ending apocalyptic climate facts. And I'm like, this may be true. I don't care. None of this is relevant in this particular discussion. This particular discussion is about these people and their jobs. And effectively, their response is, let them eat cake.
But like this, the picture here has become a lot clearer, because at one point it was really easy to think that, well, okay, they just care a whole lot about climate change, and this lets them, this leads to a lot of ideological blindness and so on. But actually, this sort of leftist narrative of it's time to bash the unions is incredibly adaptive. It's like a chameleon.
Yes.
So when you had these sort of riots where like the AFL-CIO's headquarters or whatever, people try to burn that down, or some other union, like big union office, people said, these people, they're anti-communists, and that's why it's a good thing to burn down their offices. So
bitch, you're anti-communist. Shut up.
Yeah, obviously. But it's like, okay, so at this point, the sort of test of purity, the test of flames that you have to pass through to survive as a union is, are you radical enough? And in another situation, it's like, oh, well, cops are objectively tools of the state, so we have to smash their unions. And you sort of realize that actually there is a sort of unstated process here where bad unions deserve whatever. Like if we can sort of dismantle them because cops, if we can dismantle them because climate change, if we can dismantle them because historical views held by anti-communists in the 60s, whatever, as long as we dismantle them. While like there's still some good unions out there who will not receive this treatment, but guess what? It's Silicon Valley unions and teachers unions.
Yeah, by the time you get down to those numbers, right, there's not a lot left. But you can even
for upper middle class discourse cops. They're the cop unions. But you can also hit. They're the cop unions for discourse cops who are far more necessary to the maintenance of class rule today than street cops.
Yeah. I mean, you've got unions bargaining for sensitivity readings at the New York Times, whereas you've got massive trades unions, and now they are granted conservative unions, and they are unions that that in traditional Marxism have to be destroyed or upended, etc., or taken from the inside, which is all rhetoric. The rad lib or that soft left let's just say left, will take to say, oh, let's just, we're just taking the step of destroying the unions. We're posting a few new ones in their place, or leaving a few like really impotent ones that are still very, very nice to see, very sensitive unions. But we're going to take these old line unions, which granted have been a barrier, per the arguments to this or that type of change. At the same time, these are also some of the richest and most effective unions because they control jobs. And what really is happening here, because you can only do so much in the space of time that we have while we're alive, right? Like, barring some amazing, kind of event, like a radical event of some kind. You want you're just crushing one constituency that probably won't vote for you to raise up a constituency that will.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
And the servant class that doesn't have benefits that brings them their food and so forth. So it's an interesting thing. So like on the one hand, I concede like the theoretical ground regarding conservative trades unions, but at the same time, they also control skilled labor that requires training, so they have a little bit of leverage because certain types of building and facilities work, you can't get rid of them yet. We're not all living in capsule hotels or mud
Ultimately,
huts.
this is,
we're not to that stage yet.
Yeah, this is a factional fight between different bourgeois interests, right?
It's just a factional fight,
so and
that has to be understood as such.
Yeah, the unions are the like PMC component of fractions of capital that the left doesn't represent on the national stage. And so that's why they're against them. They're against fractions of capital that the right represents. So things like fossil fuels and all the rest.
Why, like,
whereas
we brought up
all the fractions of capital that the left represents are in the symbolic professions like finance, media, Silicon Valley, tech. So literally this just becomes an interfactional battle. And so, but the problem is that the middle class and lower middle class jobs that these unions, to a degree, if not doing a great job of, again, unions are a part of like the bureaucratic management of labor. Like they're not workers' institutions as such that represent the working class on working class terms. But if we're talking about huge numbers of working class people losing their jobs and having their jobs offshored, then it does matter what's going on. Like we do need to look at what's going on. And to me, this is just an acceleration and finalization of all the shit that started with NAFTA.
Yeah, and you sort of have to tie this into